Hey, what's up, guys? We're back, and this week we're going to be doing UFC Shanghai, Michael Bisping versus Gastelum. But first, I want to talk a little bit about last week. It's another good week for us. We went 10-3, and last 5 events, I'm 43 out of 61 on my picks, and just talk a little bit about a few fights on there. Adam Weiserick, he beat Anthony Hamilton in decision, and I gotta assume that's probably the last time we're gonna see the freight train in the cage as an MMA fighter. He retired before this fight, lost the fight. It really was, pretty shitty performance by both guys. Weiserick just was able to get the split decision. He landed a few harder shots than Anthony Hamilton, but that was a pretty lackluster fight. It actually had me sweating quite a bit because I did put money on Adam Weiserick, and, he cashed for me, so that was a good win. And then, another one that we got correct that I won some money on is Nadia Kasim beat Alex Chambers. And, that was a pretty close decision, but I thought that, Kasim definitely won. That second round, you could argue it was a 10-8. She really put it on her in that round. She showed some decent ground and pound, but overly, I'm really not impressed with that camp. I'm not impressed with Ashkan, who, got knocked out by Ryan Benoit. I'm just not really impressed by that Australian top team. I thought that Ashkan was doing a lot of running in that fight against Ryan Benoit. He was basically running away, trying to land one shot, kind of steal the round with his two shots. He ended up getting head kicked. So he kind of got what was coming to him for running all night. It was a hell of a kick by Benoit, man. Another great fight that happened was Frank Camacho against Damian Brown. That was, a fight of the year candidate. Damian Brown, Frank Camacho really threw down. Camacho did land probably the harder, heavier strikes, and, that was able to edge it on the decision for the scorecards, but that was a real close fight. Nick Lentz had that sub over Will Brooks, man. I did not see that coming. Another guillotine for Nick Lentz, man. That guy just, the guillotine is his fucking go-to move, man. He gets it all the time, and another win in the UFC, man. Nick Lentz keep on keeping on, and he called out ATT. He wants to fight guys at ATT. He says, that Dan Lambert can't find a guy to beat him. I don't think Nick Lentz could beat Dustin Poirier, anything like that. But, it's a fun little rivalry there. Maybe throw him another guy from ATT, see what happens. And, another fight that I thought that was a pretty fun fight on the card was Elias Theodoro. He beat Dan Kelly, and, he kind of did what we thought he was going to do. He used his kicks, stayed on the outside, landed the volume kicks, and, basically just ran away, kept his distance, and didn't let Kelly get inside, didn't let him do much. And I just saw a lot of people thinking Dan Kelly won that fight, and I completely disagree. Elias, I thought, dominated that fight. So, but then this fight, Bojan Belichkovich against Jake Matthews. I thought Bojan got robbed, man. I thought he won that fight pretty clearly, 2-1, and we bet on that one, and I don't know, man. I think they just gave it to Matthews because it was in Australia. He is a big prospect in Australia, so who knows, man. I do think Bojan won that fight, though. I hope he gets another, another chance in the UFC, but he does fight at that pace where it's, all his fights are split decisions, man, and he doesn't really ever just differentiate himself, and due to that, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to stay in the company after that loss. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but another fight that happened was Bilal Muhammad. He got a big win over Tim Means. I saw a lot of us were on Bilal, and he cashed for us. I thought he won pretty clearly. That was a close fight. It was a split decision, but I thought that Bilal was landing the cleaner, harder strikes, especially in that first and third round. And, I thought he deserved to win. And, another upset that we correctly picked was Jessica Rose Clark over Beck Rawlings. And that was a pretty clear-cut decision. I actually thought Jessica Rose Clark looked pretty good for her debut, man. She was clean on the feet with her striking. She showed off a little bit of grappling. She pretty well-rounded, had solid cardio for the short notice, and, she put it on Beck for a little while. Beck was aggressive. She was coming forward, but, Jessica Rose Clark was getting better at that one, and I see Jessica's matchup against Paige Van Sant, so we're going to see that fight, sometime, apparently, and I think they're just basically trying to get Paige anyone that they think they could that she could beat, man. So I don't know. Jessica Rose Clark could take this as a little bit of insult that they're targeting her, because I think they really are trying to protect Paige. So I think they definitely think that Paige is going to get that win there. But then in that main event, Fabricio just keeps on keeping on, man. 40 years old, fucking throwing boomerangs in the middle of the week. He had 2 wins in the same fight week, man. He beat Colby Covington and he beat Tybor, man. I mean, had a knockout with the boomerang. And then he beat Tybor in a decision, man. And that was a fight where, once again, Fabricio just showed his open striking style, man. That guy is not afraid to get knocked out, man. He comes forward and he exposes himself, but he puts on that volume. He puts on those flying knees. That guy's a really dynamic striker for a heavyweight. He doesn't care about getting taken down. He doesn't care about getting knocked out, and that's what makes him so dynamic. So yeah, that was a pretty good card. And so moving on to this next card, the UFC Shanghai card. I didn't get to watch the replacement for Cyril Asker, so I'm not going to go over that fight, but I'm going to go over all the other ones. And the first fight of the night is Rolando Dai against Liji Buren Wu. And I'll just tell you right now, a lot of these Chinese names, I'm sorry if I mispronounce them, but I'm going to try to do my best here. But Rolando Dai, he's a boxer, has good power in his hands. I know that his father was a legendary boxer, and he seems to really do well in that boxing with boxing combination, staying in boxing range. He has a nice leg kick, but and also he has decent body lock takedowns. But he really struggles with fighters that could fight him at range. Like Alex Caceres did. Alex Caceres was keeping him on the on the end of his straight left, on the end of his straight punches, and Rolando did have some decent success. He did hurt Caceres in that fight, but he just couldn't get inside enough to do any damage. And then he also had an eye injury in that fight that he suffered pretty early, and it seemed like it was really bothering him that whole fight. And then after that, he came back. He fought Teruto Ishihara. And, he got dropped real bad in that first round, had a terrible first round. And, he came back, he finished strong. I thought he was really putting it on Ishihara at the end of that fight. He was hurting him, but it wasn't enough to get the decision. But, he's really not the greatest fighter, in my opinion. He is a decent athlete, but he does struggle with cardio as the fight wears on. And, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if he's quite UFC caliber, to be honest with you, but he's fighting Liji Buren Wu, who I seen that he has heavy hands. He kind of throws some wild combinations in the pocket. He's not afraid to open up to get shots, to take shots. He throws a lot of front kicks to the body, but he doesn't set up his kicks that well. It's not with a lot of feints, and a lot of front kicks over and over, kind of spams him at times. And I think that it's pretty easy to see those kicks coming, And on top, he's really not as active, when he gets on top. He's actually more active off of his back. He goes for a lot of subs, goes for arm bars, triangles. But on top, he really likes to hang out in that guard. He'll throw some heavy shots from ground and pound in the guard. But, he's really not as active as you like to see him. His takedowns, are with body locks primarily. And he is more of a grappler than a striker. And, I did see that he did have a decent chin, decent cardio. But I just think that Dai's not going to let him take him down. He's the better athlete here, and he has more power as well, in my opinion. And I just think that he'll be able to, land the harder, more efficient strikes on the feet, maybe rock Liji Buren a couple times. And I think that he'll win a decision here. So I'm going to go with Rolando Dai. And in this next fight, we have Gina Mazzani against Yanan Wu, who, these are definitely two lower-level women. Yanan Wu's extremely young. She's 21 years old, but she's pretty experienced. She has a lot of fights for, such a low age. And she's tall, and she's long, and she likes to use that jab, and she uses that jab and then comes over with the right hand. She has some pretty aggressive combinations, some forward pressure, and some decent hand speed as well, and she also likes to get wild in that pocket and brawl. She'll definitely take some shots to give some shots, and she's a bit of a plotter. She doesn't have the best movement, and so that sometimes hinders her from being able to get inside, being able to land her big shots, and so she tries to use that front kick is a range finder, but it really isn't a hard kick either. So it more is for finding range, and but she really likes to go attack that body lock takedown, and once she gets the body lock, she'll go for aggressive ground and pound, and she's pretty vicious on top. She'll throw some hard shots, she'll get you out of there, especially if she gets the mount or gets a dominant position. And but I did when I saw her fight Kunitskaya in her last fight, she was getting taken down basically at will, and she was attacking with some decent stuff off her back. She was attacking with leg locks and arm bars, and she didn't really get up to her feet though, but she was active off of her back, and it did seem like she lacked strength in that fight. She was getting muscled in the clinch, taken down a lot, and this fight will come down to if Mazany could pressure. If she could pressure, Controller gets the cage, and take down Wu, then it's going to be a long night for her. But if Wu could keep it standing, and try to be on, get inside, land those wild hooks, make Mazany doubt herself early, maybe rock her. She could get the win here, but I just think that Mazany is a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical, and I'm just going to go with the wrestler here. I'm going to go with Gina Mazany. And then up next is Chase Sherman against Shamil Abdurakhimov, and this is a good fight. Chase Sherman's training at Jackson Winks. He's an athletic guy, college football player. He's real active with the strikes, man. He throws a lot of volume for a heavyweight, man. A lot of kicks to the body, a lot of kicks to the legs. He doesn't have very good head movement, and he keeps his head on that center line. Justin Ledet was able to, land a lot of jabs, on him, land a lot of straight punches, and Chase Sherman was just eating them. And, he has a good chin, but he did get put down by Walt Harris, and, it's never good to just take shots as a heavyweight, So he definitely, I'm not going to say he hasn't been improving with his, defense, because he has. When he fought against Grabowski, he was doing a much better job at moving his head, much better job of staying off the center line, landing his shots and getting out of the way. And that's what he was doing. He was landing a lot of leg kicks, a lot of, big shots and moving out of the way of the counters, and then, working in more of a burst than, sloppy pressure. And, he has a good counter right hand, and he likes to knee to the body in the clinch, and he actually prefers to, throw those, not power shots. He throws fast, short shots and things like that. Instead of trying to use his power, he likes to use his volume on you, and he doesn't have the worst cardio, but his cardio could definitely be better. He gassed pretty bad against Rashad Coulter, and he was also showed some pretty bad IQ at that fight. He had Coulter, almost out of there with the leg kicks, so he decided to start, brawling with Coulter. It was really a peculiar decision. It almost lost in that fight, but he was able to put Coulter away with a real nice elbow in that fight, and that was a nice fight. That was a hell of a fight, actually. So he actually does a decent job of shucking off the takedowns with underhooks, and he pushes away, he gets open, and he's fighting another heavyweight who's very similar to him. Shamil Abdurakhimov is another smaller heavyweight who likes to use movement, fight on the outside, land his short kicks, land his punches, and he kind of likes to lull you into a slow fight. He likes to fight his own pace, and he doesn't throw a lot of shots, and he kind of just tries to pot shot you, make you uncomfortable on the outside. When you're starting to load up in your shots, he'll hit you with a small shot, small kick to the body, small leg kick. Just try to mess up your rhythm and just make the fight slow, make the fight his pace. And he actually does have some decent takedowns. He was taking down, Derek Lewis quite a bit with that double leg, and he has a good right hand, and he doesn't really attack with power, and he doesn't attack with volume either. So he, he could definitely leave himself to lose a decision here against Chase Sherman just from the volume, because Chase Sherman does throw a lot more volume than Shamil does, but Shamil does seem to me like to be the cleaner, smarter striker. But he does throw a lot of, spinning stuff that I just find a little bit peculiar. It's not very good technique and a little bit sloppy. And, Shamil has been squeaking by getting these, these decisions. He got that decision over Walt Harris. And I just don't think he's going to be able to do that against Chase Sherman, man. I think Chase Sherman is going to be able to dictate the pace more than Shamil is. He's going to be able to get in Shamil's face. He's going to deny the wrestling. he's going to be a little bit more active, and he's going to be able to get Shamil's back against the cage, work from there. And I actually think he's going to win a decision here. I don't think he'll be able to finish Shamil, but I think Chase Sherman's going to get the upset here and win a decision. And this next fight is Zanyan Yan against Kaylin Curran. And, Yan has been fighting a real low level of competition. Her last 5 fights, the record of her opponents were 2-11, and 3 of them were debuting fighters. So, she obviously isn't fighting the cream of the crop there, and a lot of them are very inexperienced. And she has been taking him out. She has a nice front kick to the face that put girls to sleep, and she lands long punches. She has left-right straight combinations. She has some pretty good power with her hands, and I do think that she keeps her chin high, and she doesn't have very good head movement. So she is there to get hit, but the thing is she hits very hard too. So I think that she kind of uses her chin and uses the fact that you could hit her to her advantage to get in the pocket and land her own shots, hurt you, and take you out, man. And this girl's vicious, man. She really goes for finishes, and it's not something you see a lot with woman fighters. Woman fighters, a lot of them lack that killer instinct, lack that finishing ability, and Yan isn't one of them, man. Yan's ruthless. She's not physically the strongest, but she's very aggressive, and she has good cardio, and she's a brawler. She'll take one to give one of her own, and she's, she really does have some very good power, and she doesn't have the best wins, like I said. She's not fighting the best quality of competition, but she is, doing what you should do to him. She's putting him out of there. She's getting him out, and so she definitely shows some promise. And she's fighting Kaylin Curran, who's, everyone knows Kaylin Curran. She's one of these hot girls in the UFC that, isn't the best fighter, but she keeps her job because of her looks, and she does have some potential. She shows flashes in all of her fights where, she'll land a nice combination with her boxing, or she'll get a nice takedown or a nice kick, and and you could see it. You could see the fluidity in her striking. You could see the fluidity in her kicks and her punches, and just the overall athleticism. And it's all there for her. She actually has a nice jab as well. And in her last fight, she was grinding against the cage more. She was looking more for her takedowns, and she was actually able to come in that 3rd round against Albu after losing the first 2, and show a lot of grit, almost get Albu out of there, and work and really go for it in that 3rd round when her team said that she needed to go for it. And she does either like start slow, or she'll start real fast and finish, and find a way to lose at the end, like she did against Alex Chambers. She never really has put a full performance in the octagon. And Kaylin, I don't know, man. I'm really not liking what I heard from her in her interviews, where she was saying things like she's used to losing, she's gotten good at losing. She wins small battles in every fight, and that's what matters to her. Things like that, where, it's just like, where's your head at when you're thinking like that? When you're thinking that, a loss is a win somehow. Where other fighters, if they lose, that, like Michael Bisping, he's coming right back 2 weeks later. He needs to fight again to get that sour taste out of his mouth. He's not thinking that he won the 2nd round against George St. Pierre and, I won that small battle. That's not the correct mentality to have, in my opinion. And I think that Curran is the much better athlete. I think she's the much better wrestler. And I think that if she used her wrestling and she was able to put a full performance in, she could win a decision easily. I think that Yan is kind of a plotter. She isn't nearly the athlete that Kaylin Curran is, but to be honest with you, man, I just think that Yan is going to be able to break Kaylin Curran, man. She's going to be able to land some hard shots, and I just don't think that Curran is a fighter, man. I don't think she has the right mentality. I don't think that she's, going to be able to survive in there with Yan, man. And I actually think Yan's going to get her out of there in that 3rd round. I think she's going to finish Kaylin Curran, and I don't know if they're going to give Kaylin Curran another opportunity at 1-6, but she's a real nice girl. She seems like she's like I said, she seems like she's a nice girl, but you can't really talk about that when you're betting. You gotta just bet the facts, and the facts are that Kaylin Curran doesn't win fights in the UFC, man. She's 1-5, and I'm not gonna change now, especially against a girl that has grit and heart and comes to bang like Jan. So I'm gonna go with Jan by third round finish. And the next fight that we have is Bharat Khandare, who's Indian wrestler, and he's fighting against Yadong Song. So the UFC definitely is trying to break into that Indian market. They had a what was his name? I can't remember the guy's name, but they had a Indian, not Indian born, but Indian descent fighter debut earlier in the UFC who got the weight. He actually is a pretty good prospect. His name's just I can't remember his name right now, but yeah, so this is the second Indian in the UFC and the first Indian-born Indian in the UFC, so that's a pretty big deal. And, Bharat, it is a little bit odd how he got into the UFC. I know that 4 years ago he was in talks to come over to the UFC, but then he took that hiatus, came back earlier this year, and, he lost his fight, but he still got the opportunity here. So he's coming in off of, one fight in the last 4 years, and that fight being a loss. But, they gave him the chance, and, Bharat definitely is a extremely powerful featherweight, man. He takes people down with ease. He lands these big slams, he does a great job getting that quick mount, and he, goes for huge ground and pound shots. But, he can get over hasty and reversed there, and he did get, reversed, and, he doesn't have any striking on the feet, man. It seems like he just has an overhand right that he uses to crash distance to go for the takedown. And it does seem powerful, but I mean, it's not going to land on anyone, that's a good striker. And he basically just uses it to crash the distance. And he did have a head kick KO in one of his fights, but, I don't know if that was as much of a fluke as it is, him being good at head kicks. So... the way that he goes for the win, man, is if he has a grappling advantage, he has the athleticism advantage, he could take you down, and, he could take you out with that ground and pound mount, and he definitely is a explosive athletic athlete, and he's going to be ready to go,